Welcome in for another episode of the Silver and Blue Podcast. We are on episode 50 of this show since we started this back in March. And what a day for episode number 50 on this little milestone for us, as we are going to be reviewing the Cowboys' 31-14 win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card round. Corey, it was 31-14, but even that's deceiving in terms of how close this game really was. What a performance by the Cowboys. What a performance by Dak, and what a performance by this defense. Just kudos to everyone all around.
Yeah, I mean, coming into, when we were doing our preview last week and kind of some things that we were looking for, pretty much everything that we talked about and things that we wanted to see, we pretty much saw last week. The defense kind of went back to the form of 5 or 6 weeks ago when, we were all optimistic about this team making a legit Super Bowl run. And are they the best team in the NFC? And yeah, I mean, it was just a complete performance. I know we're going to talk a lot about Dak today. Major shout out to Dak. That is the type of performance that he's capable of, and why I know I'm pretty critical of him when I don't feel like I'm seeing that type of play. But he was flawless last night, and I mean, he could not have played any better. I don't think he's played a better game in his entire career than last night. He was just quick, decisive, making his decisions, and his reads were on point. He was spreading the ball around, and yeah, it was a great performance. And I mean, there's not much more you can say other than yeah, that was shout out to Dak.
Yeah, everyone on the offense was really good. I thought the offensive line was very solid compared to what I was expecting. But yeah, Dak Prescott, 25 of 33, 305 yards, 9.2 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, no picks. And he also had a rushing touchdown mixed in there on just a fantastic play call on 4th and goal by Kellen Moore. And I was talking to my dad this morning, he said it right. I was like, I don't think Dak could have executed that fake any better. I had no idea where the ball was until I
Not
saw
at
Dak
all.
break to the left, and I was like, oh my God, what a play call. Um, but yeah, looking at the PFF numbers from Dak last night, I mean, he was just terrific. He was only pressured on 10 of his dropbacks. He was graded a little bit worse under pressure versus kept clean, but who wasn't? But he was just great all night. When he was kept clean, he was 19 of 24 for 252 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he picked them apart all night. His passing chart in terms of like depth and areas of the field he was attacking. He was, let's see here, he was 3 for 4. Yeah, that's 3 for 4 for let's see, doing some quick math here, 74 yards and a touchdown. At 20 plus yards downfield. He was let's see, that is, yeah, 6 for 6 on throws between 10 and 20 yards downfield. I mean, he was just fantastic, had complete command of the offense, made great throws all night. I mean, the first couple drives were a little hairy, but those were mostly drops. Those weren't really Dak playing poorly.
And I
Um,
thought there was some shaky play calling. Like I
yeah,
didn't like what they were doing with some of the screen passes, and I felt like
yeah.
they were trying to force feed CD Lamb the ball, especially those first two plays.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean that was definitely looking rough, and it looked like the offense was broken at that point in the game for sure.
Yeah, the first 2 drives were concerning, and then after that, it just they got going, and it was fantastic. It was, I believe Dak was the highest graded offensive player for the Cowboys. Um, I I struggle to think I struggle to think if there's a better performance in his career. And
Mhm.
that's without circumstances. When you factor in the circumstances and what all was on the line, and I don't know if any of the listeners saw my article that I put out before the game saying, "Is Dak's legacy on the line on Monday?" A hell of a lot more was on the line last night for Dak than just that game. If Dallas had lost that game, the noise about Dak, he was going to fall to 1-4 in the playoffs. He was going to lose to a below 500 Tampa Bay team, albeit with Tom Brady, but still, Dallas was better than them, and they showed that. If they lose that game, the noise surrounding Dak would have been deafening all offseason, fair or not. And he
Mhm.
came out there with all of that on the line and played the game of his career. And one thing I said on Twitter last night was I'm just really happy for him, man. He's been given a lot of BS from this fan base, from the media, from other fan bases. Like the narrative about Dak, and that was one other thing I detailed in that article, is just the narrative surrounding Dak has just been one of the bigger roller coasters you'll ever see. especially this year when you consider they start the year with that disaster against those same Buccaneers, and then Dak breaks his thumb, and your two lasting memories of Dak are the performance in the playoffs against the Niners, that awful performance against Tampa Bay, and then Rush goes 4-1, and people start saying Rush should remain the starter, and then the interception stuff happened. It's just been a hell of a year for the Dak narrative, and I'm really happy for him that he kind of shut a lot of people up last night. That was the game of his career, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And, I've been one of the guys that, has been kind of like, dude, Dak, like, what are we doing out here? And, despite how mostly well he was playing, he just couldn't shake the turnover bug, 7 straight weeks of throwing an interception, his fault or not. At some point that had to stop. And, he picked a great time last night to, kind of show off, with those 5 total touchdowns and, ball security. And there's maybe one decision throughout the entire game that, was kind of like, okay, Dak, you probably shouldn't have thrown that one. And that was kind of late. I want to say it was probably late in the third quarter where he was rolling out to his right and kind of try to force one in before he went out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
But that was like the only decision there that was just like, all right, maybe you shouldn't have made that decision. But other than that, there was not another decision in the entire game where he didn't feel like he was in complete control of the offense, complete control of what he wanted to do with the ball. I know Troy Aikman and Joe Buck kind of mentioned that throughout the broadcast last night. And, I believe Brad Sham, the voice of the Cowboys, he said that was his best performance in his career. And yeah, I mean, like I said, couldn't have come at a better time. Now, obviously, we're going to celebrate this win, but obviously the job's not done.
Yep.
You got a great San Francisco team coming up, on Sunday evening. That's going to be a major test for this team as well. But yeah, I mean, that performance last night is definitely one that, we're going to be talking about, for a couple of days.
Yeah, it was again just so happy for him, and he was just terrific. Another guy who deserves a lot of love, and then we'll get to the offensive line is Dalton Schultz. He's received a lot of flack as well, both from the fan base and a little bit from this podcast. The way Dak spread it to him throughout the night, he finished with 7 catches on 8 targets for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. The first touchdown was just a great play by Dak, in where the play design was perfect. Dak looked off the safety to the left just long enough to keep that window open to fit that throw into Schultz. And then the second one was just like, we've talked about, the return of Dalton Schultz and how much that was going to help Dak, just in terms of having somebody to lean on and somebody that he has a good rapport with. That second one was all just Dalton Schultz and Dak Prescott being on the same page, where Dak was in trouble rolling out to his left and Schultz kind of drifted a little bit back towards his left and Dak's right. And Dak made a great throw, just threading it back across his body for a touchdown. I thought Schultz was great. CeeDee Lamb, and then the rest of the receivers, no one had a particularly big night, but Dak just kind of spread the ball around. CeeDee, and it seemed like they were throwing a lot of attention at CeeDee, but the protection was able to hold up long enough. I mean, it was great to see Michael Gallup finally perform at the level that we've been hoping for.
It's
T.Y.
something we
Hilton had a
talked about
couple
as
important
well.
catches. Like all those guys that, we talked about, right? Those guys are going to need to step up. T.Y. Hilton and Michael Gallup absolutely stepped up. And while their numbers aren't anything ridiculous, T.Y. and Michael Gallup made it. And I think one of T.Y.'s catches was a pretty important third down conversion. It was around midfield, if I remember correctly. But yeah,
Yep.
CD was himself, and it wasn't a huge night for him, but the other receivers stepped up for sure, and it was great to see.
Yeah, it was good to see, especially on Gallup's part, because I know he was in the media last week, like a lot of the Cowboys were talking about this game, and he basically said that, he's looking forward to, getting some opportunities this week because he kind of knew going into it that they were going to pay a lot of attention to CD Lamb coming off a second team All Pro voting that came out at the end of last week. And, that was kind of the expectation. There was going to be a lot of doubles on CD, and he was going to have, his opportunities were going to be, kind of limited. But on Gallup's part, he knew those opportunities were going to come to him. He stepped up 5 catches, 46 yards, and a touchdown on, a toe tap that was reviewed, but it ended up getting tipped. So it didn't matter that he might have or might not have stepped out of bounds. But it was a great performance. And then Schultz, he performed like a guy that is ready to get his next contract this
Yep.
offseason. So hopefully, we can get 3 more games out of him like that. and send him off and ride off into free agency and get a nice little healthy contract after a Super Bowl win, hopefully. But still got 3 games to go for that, and San Francisco's not going to be easy. But yeah, I mean, just Ty, big third down catch over the middle of the field for 14 yards. Huge play to keep on the field, and it just felt like after those first two possessions, even when they did get to the Cowboys, or when the Cowboys did get to third downs, it just felt like Dak was just going to make whatever a play that needed to happen to make sure that the offense stayed on the field. He even used his legs some, which is something that we didn't
Yep.
mention a couple minutes ago when talking about Dak, which was definitely a sight to see. It's been a long time since he really used his legs like that. So I thought that was encouraging as well.
Yeah, Dallas was 7 of 13 on third down, 2 of 2 on fourth down. Just great stuff on, if you're going to win in the playoffs, you're going to have to succeed on third down. And, those are the money downs. That's where you make your money. And they certainly did. It was really encouraging to see on a lot of fronts. And, I think Dak heard the noise. I think he heard the noise and kind of tuned it out a little bit. I think he tuned it out and just played free. He looked as confident as he's ever looked. Now, granted, this is not like super shocking in terms of, oh my God, we've never seen him play like this. Because I said after the Eagles game that was arguably the best game of his career against the Eagles, where he was just on fire, the game on Christmas. So, this isn't completely unmarked territory for Dak. Like, we've seen a great performance from him before, but never with everything that was on the line last night. Let's look at the offensive line really quick, talk about them. I was very interested in, I would love to know what went into why they started with that lineup that they did with Peters at left tackle, Tyler Smith at left guard, and Biotish at center. I tweeted it before the game, and I think you quote tweeted me or like, update, he could not. I was like, my biggest thing with Peters, and the reason I liked having him as kind of your backup tackle, was something goes sideways, if someone gets hurt, then he can play in a pinch. He can give you 30 snaps. He can give you 20 snaps if someone goes down mid game, and he can be a serviceable left tackle. And so I kind of liked him in that role. I just didn't trust Jason Peters to hold up at 40 years old for hopefully a full playoff run. And then sure enough, he goes down, I think 30 snaps into the game. And it's like, all right, Tyler, and it's back to the lineup that I thought they were going to roll out, where it was going to be Tyler at left tackle, Connor McGovern at guard, and Biotish at center. And thankfully they didn't really miss a beat, because Tyler Smith was terrific at left tackle. The growth he's shown throughout the season from the first Tampa Bay game to this Tampa Bay game is just fantastic. Now it sounds like it's a hip injury for Jason Peters. We're going to have to hear more about that, but things are getting really thin on the offensive line if Peters isn't able to go. Hopefully he's able to be ready to go, and maybe they move him back to swing tackle for this week against San Francisco, if he's even able to play. Because who knows? I mean, he's 40 years old. I'm not expecting him to heal super quickly, but
it's a hip injury at that.
Thank goodness Tyler Smith played really well at left tackle.
Yeah, that was actually something that I had heard, not necessarily that the offensive line changes, but I heard Brian Broaddus and I believe Brad Sham had mentioned that they were going to lean on Dak Prescott and they wanted the best pass blocking line out there. So I think that kind of played a part into, making that change. But obviously it lasted about 30 snaps before Peters went out with his hip injury. And, they were still able to, maintain and, play well enough to give Dak time, and Dak was able to have plenty of time in the pocket. I believe it was on the first touchdown throw, like his pocket. I mean, there wasn't anybody within like 5 feet of him. It felt like, or it looked like. So it was just one of those things where now they're gonna have to adjust again. I'm interested to see, because it sounded like a lot of what went into this game was just different game planning. We're gonna talk about this on the defense as well, but they definitely came up with a plan for this specific game and the best way to attack the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what they look at, when they look at San Francisco film, kind of what they look at and see, all right, this might be an advantage here, or, we might want to make line adjustments here to ensure that, we can, I guess, hold off on that great San Francisco defensive line. But I made a shout out to the coaching staff for, being, able to make those changes and adjust on the fly, and shout out to the players for actually executing. I thought Tyron Smith played His best
Yes.
game since he's come back
Yep.
uh, by far. And, that's huge going into next week's game where, you're going to go against, Nick Bosa, probably the defensive player of the year, and, the rest of the guys that they have on that line. So, yeah, big shout out to the offensive line for last night's performance.
Yeah, the rushing attack wasn't very good. And I just, without Terrence Steele, I think that's just kind of how things are. Tony Pollard was pretty effective. I think he had like 75 yards on 15 touches. And then Zeke was just gave you a really inefficient 13 carries for, I want to say, like 25 yards. But so like, and again, it's kind of reflected in the
27,
run
yeah.
block grades, but most of the pass block grades are really good except for Tyler Biotish. Tyler Biotish got a pass block grade of 31.6. He was tabbed for 6 pressures and 1 sack. Um, and I'm not too concerned about that just because it was his first game back on a high ankle sprain, and they said, here's Vita Vea, who is one of my man crushes in the NFL, who I would just love to have on the Cowboys someday. Vita Vea is a blast to watch, and he had his way with Biotish a lot. I mean, and not just Vea, it was Akeem Hicks was making some plays. So, but yeah, Biotish gave up 6 pressures, but Zach Martin, clean sheet. Tyron Smith only gave up 1 hurry. Tyler Smith, clean sheet. McGovern only gave up 1 pressure. And Jason Peters had only given up 1 pressure before he went out with his injury. So, I do think there's some credence to, maybe that. And this is awesome. This is like terrific news. And what we've been begging for all year is they're going to lean on Dak in the
Right.
passing game rather than the run game, because that's created some real inefficiencies. And one thing that you and I have been clamoring for just about all season long is early down passing. The inefficient early down runs were killing this offense late in the season. And last night
Hmm.
from Marcus Mosher, tweeted Cowboys Dak Prescott on first and second down last night, 18 for 23 for 221 yards and 3 touchdowns with a passer rating of 146.3. This is what we've been asking for all year. And if this is their plan going forward, then that raises the ceiling of this team, because then like when they call plays efficiently and they lean on Dak on the early downs, that's when this offense is actually efficient, and you're not asking Dak to convert on 3rd and a mile every other play. So, that if this game plan is real and they're not going with the Jones plan of trying to establish the run all the time, then this has a chance to, be special in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of like you said, we've been talking about this all season. The early down runs is not the way to go, especially with this particular team. It's just not built that way. This isn't the 2016 offensive line where you're creating all that, the run blocking lanes necessary. This isn't 2016 Zeke anymore, although we do have Pollard and he's very good. But yeah, it's just not today's NFL. I mean, just simple as that. And now going against San Francisco, we're going in. I expect more of the same. San Francisco's not going to give up a lot of runs, and Tampa Bay wasn't really going to give up a lot of runs. You're going to attack with your
Mm-hmm.
quarterback, and if your quarterback plays like that, on Sunday again, he gives you another great chance to win that football game. So put the ball in your $40 million quarterback's hands and stop with the running the Zeke, and it's just not an effective way to approach good defenses in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with a great defensive line that's probably going to be able to stuff the run a little bit coming up this Sunday, they're going to need to stick to that game plan, because this Tampa Bay defense is good. It's not as good as San Francisco's defense, and this Dallas offense just hasn't been able to run the ball very efficiently pretty much ever since Terrence Steele got hurt. I'm going to be praying all week that they don't come out and try and establish the run against Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, and Fred Warner, because I don't think that will go well. I think their best chance is going to be to lean
No,
on Dak going forward.
you will get run out of that
Um,
building Sunday if you do that.
Yes, absolutely, especially the way their offense is rolling. But let's talk about the Cowboys defense, because we spent a lot of time on Dak. He deserves his flowers, and I don't know if I said this on the pod, but I saw someone say this on Twitter last week. But they basically said, look, if number 4 and number 11, either those two play like MVPs or you're going home. There's no two ways about it. Dak played like an MVP last night, and so did Micah Parsons. I was really worried about, I was starting to get worried that he might have hit a little bit of a wall. He looked really banged up recently, and he goes out there and he plays 79 of 82 snaps for Dallas last night, 60 of them in pass rush. He racks up 8 pressures, 1 sack, 1 hit, 6 hurries. He had 3 stops, which is that PFF metric I mentioned before. I believe that led Dallas. Yeah, that led Dallas in stops, and he set the tone early. I believe early on he had a tackle for loss on Tampa Bay's first drive, and like within the
Mm-hmm.
first couple drives,
First play of the game.
he was already starting to get in Tom Brady's lap, and I texted my Cowboys group chat I'm in, and I was just like, Micah came to play. Like Micah set the tone, and that really just got Tampa Bay off on the wrong foot. And in a game where the defense only totaled, I think it was 2 sacks. Pressures can be more important than sacks because they were in Brady's lap all night long. Even though it was only 2 sacks, they were in his lap all night long. They totaled 24 pressures last night. And, a lot of those misfires from Brady came on, throwing off his back foot or what have you.
He
Micah
just wasn't
Parsons.
comfortable all night.
Yeah, he wasn't comfortable. And Micah in this pass rush deserves a lot of credit. There's other names that we'll get to, but Micah deserves his flowers. That was the best he's looked in a few weeks at least. I mean, he was fantastic, and I can't get over that 79 snaps. Like, that is by far the most he's played in a game all year. Just MVP stuff for Micah.
Yeah, that was definitely encouraging to see. Because like I know we've talked about this, and it's been one of my concerns as well. Down the stretch of like the last 5 or 6 weeks is how are we going to get Micah Parsons to the finish line? And even during the last couple of weeks, I was like, we might need to find Micah Parsons like a week off in there. And it felt like he kind of got a week off. It was maybe the extra day. Playing on Monday night versus playing on
Mm-hmm.
Sunday. But whatever it was, it definitely re-energized, or maybe it was just playoff Micah. The way superstars just step up in the playoffs. They realize it's the big games, and the Lion was hungry, and he was ready to feast on Tampa Bay's offense. And I think a lot of not just Michael Parsons, but I thought Mokwamu came in and he
Yep.
played really well on the back end. Xavier Rhodes, I'm not sure how many snaps he played, but I didn't notice him really make any, plays that, stuck out
Um,
negatively. Leighton Vander Esch
Rhodes,
was impressive.
Rhodes played 24 snaps. Just want to throw that in there.
Okay.
They kind of went with a lot of safeties to mitigate the corner issues, and I thought that was a
Yes.
good game plan.
Yeah, Curse was great. I felt like, he was doing a lot of coverage on Russell Gage. I saw him out there on Chris Godwin at one point. And then, like I said, Leighton Vander Esch was all over the field. And what a presence he made, with his presence being back out there on the field. So, yeah, I mean, there's just so many guys that stepped up, but it all started with Micah Parsons setting the tone on the very first play of the game. After you had an ugly offensive drive to start the game, you come out and we're going to put you behind the chains immediately as well. And Michael Parsons did that, and that's what we needed. I saw your tweets saying we needed our MVPs to play like MVPs, and Dak and Micah did that last night.
Yeah, absolutely. And, they certainly did. But you mentioned a few of the names that deserve their flowers after last night. At the top of that list, and you mentioned him, is Leighton Vander Esch. I mean, who would have thought at the beginning of the year that Leighton Vander Esch would end up being so important to this defense? I mean, he's far and away their best linebacker. Like, he almost looks like I don't think he's quite at that level yet, or quite at that level anymore at this point, but he looks about as close to rookie year LVE as he has, since then. Last night, his numbers are outstanding. He received really high grades across the board. He finished with 7 tackles, 2 stops, was really good in coverage, had a couple pass breakups. He even registered a pressure. And I think his pressure was really important. I want to say it was on it was like a second or third and long, and Brady had someone breaking over the middle that was going to be open, and LVE came up the middle, and I think Jensen went with Parsons, and that freed up LVE, and he had a free run
Mm-hmm.
at Brady. It kind of knocked Brady off, made him uncomfortable, and it caused him to misfire, and he had a big gain in front of him if Brady didn't get pressured. LVE deserves a lot of credit. Jaron Curse deserves a ton of credit, and thankfully it sounds like his injury is going to be all right. Sounds like he's going to be able to go, which is huge because they're going to need him this week against Kittle and Debo and all those weapons that the
Mm-hmm.
49ers have. Donovan Wilson is another name that deserves a lot of credit. He didn't make any like outstanding plays where
Splash
you're,
plays, yeah.
but
Hmm.
but he made it like early on. He had a couple hits that were violent and helped set the tone. And I think that's what he's kind of done all year. He's just been a violent safety that helps set the tone and bring some swagger to this defense that they haven't had. I know there's other names, but one other name that deserves a lot of credit, and he was actually Dallas's highest graded defender, was Oso Digizua. Uh, this was the best game he's played all year. He finished with 3 pressures. He received the highest grade of 82.8. That's the highest grade on the defense. He had a couple stops. I believe he had a tackle for loss fairly early on, but yeah, Osa deserves a lot of credit. Hankins had a couple stops. The defensive tackles were
Dorrance
pretty solid
Armstrong
yesterday.
was,
Yes. I mean, they
yeah,
all did.
Dorrance
There's
Armstrong made
nobody.
a couple of plays, yeah.
There's nobody, and you had a couple things you could have nitpicked early on with some things on the offense, just different people individually not playing very well. I don't think there was anybody on the defense that really stood out as, oh, he didn't have a very good night. Like, I'm racking my brain, and I don't think there was. Like, this was the best. This was the defense of the first 8 or 9 games of the season that we've been missing the last few weeks, and I think Dan Quinn deserves a lot of credit for his game plan. Because I mentioned earlier, they rolled out more safeties to help mitigate these cornerback issues, and Izzy Mukwamu deserves a lot of credit for that. He helped a lot. I thought Trevon Diggs had a really weird night, but even then, tonight was
Yeah.
I guess that's one in terms of I didn't think he played all that great, but last night was one of those games where if you're going to make the case that pass rush or pressure is more important than coverage, you point to that one, because for all the problems Dallas has in the secondary injury wise, the pass rush mitigated a lot of those issues, and that was the best the pass rush has looked in weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with all of those points. And I just want to talk about Trayvon Diggs real quick because
Yeah,
I felt like he was kind of running away from contact last night. And
yeah,
while it didn't really hurt them last night, if he does that against San Francisco, that is going to pose a humongous problem for Sunday's game. So that is definitely something that I hope, they look at the film this week, and I hope he looks at the film and kind of can evaluate himself and just say he has to be better, and
he
especially
does.
he has to at least participate on defense. And when players are coming at him, he can't kind of circle around them and kind of backpedal, or it's going to be a physical game on Sunday evening. So that is just definitely one thing that definitely stood out to me, and something that I think Trevon Diggs probably knows he needs to be better at.
Yeah, and it's kind of been an issue all year with him just tackling. It's been better, but this kind of looked like week 1 Trevon Diggs, where I don't know, the effort wasn't all the way there. I don't know. It was a weird night from him, but thankfully the pass rush was able to step up and make life really hard on Tom Brady. A lot of guys in that defense deserve a lot of credit, and Dan Quinn is also towards the top of that list. But on Diggs, uh, given the Niners' style of play and how they're physical they are and how much they like to run at you, I know you already know Kyle Shanahan is drawing up some plays. He's gonna have some plays schemed up where he's gonna get Debo Samuel in space
Yep.
against Trevon Diggs, and that's something that they did a little bit last year where they kind of tried to exploit his aggressiveness. I remember Jimmy G last year in the playoff game missed a wide open Brandon Ayuk when he cooked Diggs. Diggs
Yep.
was caught
Yep.
completely guessing. Diggs just needs to play his game, stick to his fundamentals, and just play like he's played all year. Last night was just a weird performance from here. They're gonna need him to bounce back. But yeah, I guess he's kind of the only one that I was kind of like, all right, you need to step up. But
Could be better.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of those guys, so many people on that defense deserve a lot of credit. Demarcus Lawrence had a really weird night. He was the lowest graded defender by a lot. Um, he only had 1 pressure. He was invisible last night. They're going to need him to step up. And I guess those are the two. You have 2 guys that you're going to need to step up next week against San Francisco that didn't have very good
Two of your
weeks
better
this week.
players.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
those are 2 of your best players. So hopefully they're able to step up. But yeah, Then not to end on a negative, but these guys, what a performance! These guys deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, just definitely. I mean, it's first road win since '92 for the franchise. Dak Prescott ties the franchise record for most touchdown passes in a playoff game. And to do it against Tom Brady and possibly send him, either into retirement or maybe in his
Yeah,
last game as a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, whatever he decides to do, sending him out like that is definitely nothing to sneeze at. And I don't really care about how down Tampa Bay was this entire year because going into the game, I picked Tampa Bay to win. So I can't come here and say, oh, it was just an 8-9 football team this week, when I actually picked Tampa Bay to win. So for them to come out and, put on that type of dominant performance, it just goes to show and why I get so frustrated with this team sometimes. It's like this is needs to be the consistent play of this team going forward. In San Francisco, win, lose, or draw, need this type of effort and this type of performance. And yes, it's going to be a better team, but they do have a rookie quarterback. And I know he's been playing phenomenal football, but this is a game where you can go in there and hopefully Dan Quinn can come up with a scheme to, kind of give Purdy some different looks than he's seen, for through these first, 6, 7 games or how many games he's played. But yeah, major shout out to the Dallas Cowboys for, winning game one of hopefully what is a long playoff run. And who knows, Sunday afternoon we could be playing for a chance to host the NFC title game, depending on what else happens in the NFC. So that would be exciting as well. But one step at a time, and we will talk about San Francisco later this week. And that will be exciting to kind of preview that matchup.
Yeah, just as we all predicted, 3 of the 4 remaining teams in the NFC are from the NFC East, and just as we predicted, the only thing standing between the Cowboys and their first NFC Championship game appearance is Brock Purdy, just as we all predicted. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
San Francisco's won 10 games in a row.
yeah,
Who would have thought that?
like
It's
man,
crazy.
that's the NFL for you. That's the NFL for you. So again, it just feels like they exercised a lot of demons. They got the monkey off their back. They were able to get that first playoff win that everyone said they couldn't get. Um, this game just feels like that game felt like a massive mental hurdle that they needed to clear before they could even think about making a playoff run. And now here they are. They've got the win, and they're ready to go on a playoff run. And I
It's time to
guess
return the favor to San Francisco. I mean,
yeah,
they
yeah.
came in
And there's
here
a
and
revenge
bullied.
factor this week.
Yeah, they came in and bullied the team last year, and it sent a lot of questions into the organization about how they want to approach team building. It made them get rid of some guys that were kind of questionable on should the Cowboys have gotten rid of some of these guys. Amari Cooper, for example, is one of those names. So now it is time to stand up and beat the big bad bully. And
Yep,
then kind of do. I saw a tweet last night. Also, it was like it's time for Dak Prescott to do what Aaron Rodgers did to him in 2016 in the
yep,
divisional round. So
yep.
that like I said, it's going to be an exciting matchup. I'm glad that we actually get to talk about this matchup. It's a team that I have. It seems like it's probably the favorite in the NFC, despite them not
Yeah,
being the number one seed in the NFC. But it's going to be a tall task, and like I said, this team coming off that type of win last night, they should have all the confidence in the world, despite the NFL not doing them any favors with the scheduling.
yeah,
San
yeah,
Francisco playing Saturday, and then the Cowboys having to play on Monday night and in a short week. And this whole, we'll talk about that later in the week as well. But yeah, this team should have a lot of confidence going into San Francisco next week. And like I said, it's time to return the favor.
yeah. And it's time to do something the Cowboys haven't done in a long time. And I'm not entirely sure exactly how old you are, Corey, but I'm assuming this is the first road playoff win you've seen. And hopefully
I
this
was
is the
2
first.
last time
Okay,
they
yeah.
did.
So,
Yeah,
and I'm sure you don't have many vivid memories of the last time they were in the NFC Championship game. So it's
nope.
time to it's
It's
time
time
to
to
go
get
on a little
there.
bit of a run here. So, certainly my first because I'm 22 years old. So, it's time to start checking the boxes off of stuff they haven't done in years. So, not much else you
Yes.
can say other than how about them Cowboys? And we will talk to you guys later this week to preview the Cowboys at the San Francisco 49ers for the divisional round and a trip to the NFC Championship on the line. Um, yeah, it's going to be a fun week. That game is going to get ridiculous ratings for Fox. I'm sure they're
Oh
thrilled to
yes.
have that Sunday evening slot. But yeah,
Yes.
uh, not much else to say other than how about them Cowboys. So make sure to check out everything we're doing at the Dallas Sports Fanatic. Check us out on Twitter at Cowboys News 365 and at Dallas_Fanatic. You can get Corey on Twitter at the Mr. Douglas with 2 S's. You can get me on Twitter at Nate_Sanch77. Thank you guys for listening to the Silver and Blue podcast. And we'll talk to you guys next time when we preview the Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers with a trip to the NFC Championship game on the line.